Hey everyone, this is the introduction to the history of the left from Marx to the present, Theoretical Perspectives by Darrrow Schecter. Quote, "The only real critique was and remains the critique of the left. Why? Because it alone is based upon knowledge." End quote. Henri Lefebvre. In his wide-ranging and scholarly study demanding the impossible, a history of anarchism, Peter Marshall accomplishes the impressive feat of providing an account of anarchist thought and action that dates back to ancient Greece, moving through the Middle Ages and including valuable information on the English Civil War and the role played in it by groups such as the Levelers and Ranters. His study then proceeds right up to the New Left and ecological currents within the New Left anarchism of the 1960s and 1970s. This book sets out to do something quite different. In addition to looking at anarchism, it examines a range of other ideas and movements on the left. The book begins much later than Marshall's study and concludes with a look at contemporary movements against neoliberal globalized capitalism. Although it is a history, as the title suggests, it is for the most part a history of theoretical perspectives. Major events such as the Paris Commune, the Russian Revolution, the Spanish Civil War, May 1968, Seattle 1999, and the founding of the First World Social Forum in Porto Alegre in January 2001 are all discussed in varying degrees of detail, but they are usually analyzed against the background of a series of theoretical arguments that run from Karl Marx to Michel Foucault, Gilles Deleuze, and Antonio Negri. The quotation above from Henri Lefebvre offers a good indication of the central theme addressed throughout the book, which is the relation between knowledge, left politics, and human emancipation. In order to provide theoretical and analytical coherence to the study of this theme, it has been necessary to bypass a number of important episodes in the history of the left that other authors may well have considered essential. There is not a great deal about new social movements, NSMs, such as peace, feminist, ecology, gay, and related networks that have been politically active on the left. The book does not provide a history of the former Soviet Union or the regimes associated with Mao, Castro, and other state socialist leaders, nor does it look in any detail at the evolution of social democracy. Some readers will consider the account here excessively Eurocentric and may be inclined to argue that there is not nearly enough on anti-colonial struggles or movements such as the Sandinistas, Zapatistas, the Sendero Luminoso, etc. I think Sendero Luminoso, I think that's the Spanish for the Shining Path, the Maoist group that killed all those people in Peru. In short, it may be objected that the history of the left in this book unnecessarily privileges marginal offshoots of the European labor movement without, until the last chapter, adequately engaging with international developments. These criticisms are in some measure justified. Yet the chapters here are Marx, Western Marxism, critical theory, libertarian socialism, and anarchism, the critique of everyday life, and the critique of power cover a wide array of thinkers and ideas. It is proved impossible to do justice to the complexity of the material in question, while at the same time in examining NSM's social democracy and anti-colonial struggles. To have attempted to do so in the space allowed would have resulted in the trivialization of these struggles. The relative neglect of these topics in this book is indicative of the wealth and diversity of left political struggle and is in no way symptomatic of any intention to minimize their importance. Although there are many ways of presenting the history of the left, the one offered in this book begins with Marx and the diverse struggles for human emancipation that have characterized European and world history since the French Revolution. The reasons for this choice of approach will become clear in due course, rather than being a series of casual reflections on marginal offshoots of the European labor movement. Each chapter builds on the previous one in an attempt to analyze the emergence and development of a specialty left-wing understanding of the relation between knowledge, left politics, and emancipation. For the thinkers and movements in question, this methodology poses a series of even more fundamental questions about humanity and nature. The crucial question is how to institutionalize the relation between humanity and nature in a free society of fully humanized individuals. By the end of chapter 6, it becomes clear how and why fundamental left concepts such as humanism and human emancipation are now problematic. The conclusion takes up the issue of what this impasse might mean for the future of the left. If the crisis of humanism is a relatively recent problem for left thinkers and movements, it is compounded by the older problem that the capitalist and liberal democratic systems, first analyzed in a systematic and critical fashion by Marx, continue to be hegemonic. At first glance, it appears that liberal democracy remains hegemonic because it succeeds in imposing the view that it is liberalism, as opposed to all other political doctrines, that protects individual liberty within a democratic framework and that in practice makes individual freedom compatible with collective political accountability. Moreover, this view seems to be confirmed by the history of state socialism in the former USSR, China, Cuba, North Korea, etc. On the one hand, there is broad agreement among the various thinkers and movements considered in this book that liberal democratic liberty is for the most part negative individual liberty, i.e. it is freedom not to be interfered with, rather than a positive or creative affirmation. There is also broad agreement that institutionalized negative liberty legislates an oppressive obsession with one's own career, property, children, and future. On this reading, the obsession leads to the generation of liberty into narrow-minded consumerism and private retreat from political life. The conclusion is that negative liberty undermines the democratic bases of collective political accountability by destroying the channels of communication between citizens that genuine political accountability requires. On the other hand, the history of the left has also been a history of the, at times, violent disagreements about how to counter these tendencies and about what might serve as a libertarian alternative to liberal democracy. If this alternative exists, it offers the key to answering the question about how to institutionalize the relationship between humanity and nature in a free society. It will be seen in Chapter 1 that the moderns search systematically to understand the conditions under which such an alternative could exist begin with Marx. End of introduction.